Ryla Brix Vondra had survived Black Ops missions, orbital firestorms, and a 3-week silent retreat with Marines who only communicated via passive-aggressive protein shake slams, but nothing prepared her for this. The moment her jury-rigged cratecraft burst out of hyperspace above Gloriana Maxima Ultra Prime, sirens screamed like offended opera singers. Her onboard AI, which she'd hotwired out of a vending machine named Kyle, immediately short-circuited after witnessing the IA, Capital's Imperial Symmetry. That's too many columns, it whimpered before combusting in a puff of lemon-scented smoke. Brix didn't have time to mourn. She was here on a rescue mission. Target, one AWOL border collie with a god complex and a bladder. Problem. Operation Find General Waffles was officially a go, and yes, she named her dog General. He earned the rank after chewing through a dictator's prosthetic foot. Now, though, the general was missing, last seen escaping an annexed colony aboard a sanitation skiff, possibly believing the blinking waste chute led to Valhalla. Brix descended like a cussing comet, her makeshift ship groaning from hull stress, a metal lunchbox tumbling in 0G and smacking her helmet. The Kralaxian traffic control system tried to hail her. She answered by flipping the signal into a loop of waffles barking the U.S. national anthem. The control tower exploded from cultural confusion. Landing wasn't smooth. It was somewhere between dramatic entrance and mild war crime. Her craft skidded through the Plaza of Supreme Obedience, took out a statue of Supreme Arch-Overlord Scriblorx Varn Thib, the gloriously entitled, he of the 14 shoulder pads, and finally screeched to a halt inside a noodle kiosk. One noodle. Vendor saluted her. Another fainted. That's one way to declare brunch, Brix muttered, stepping out in her modified SEAL armor, duct tape over bullet holes, a helmet with motivational stickers like "Don't Make Me Human Today," and a sidearm named Petunia. The crowd gathered instantly, gasping Kralaxians in ceremonial sashes, sentient clipboards, and at least one floating bureaucrat with 7 stamps of disapproval already inked. "Halt!" shouted a 4-eyed officer with a spear that looked suspiciously like a curtain rod. "You have violated 47 statutes, including Article 22A, unlawful orbit entry without pomp." "Noted," Brix deadpanned, brushing marble dust off her shoulder. "Now, unless any of those statutes mention my dog, I'm going to keep walking." The crowd murmured. Statutes did not, in fact, mention dogs. Protocols were consulted. A pamphlet, titled, "What to Do When a Terran Arrives with Weaponized Sarcasm," was retrieved. It burst into flames. Meanwhile, in a far-off trash corridor, General Waffles was having the time of his life. Having emerged from a refuse hatch with a victorious bark, he had promptly befriended 6 janitor bots by peeing on their recharge hub and declaring dominance via tailwag. One of the bots, nicknamed Squeegee Prime, recorded Waffles' vocalizations and interpreted them as divine command. A vending machine cult was born within an hour. Rituals involved spinning in circles, licking terminals, and barking at any image of the Overgeneral's face. Back in the plaza, Brix marched straight into the Ministry of Historical Enforcement, bypassing 10 guards by asking them who was in charge of mop failure incidents. They're still debating the chain of command. She commandeered a mobility scooter, slapped Emergency Diplomacy Unit on the front with crayon, and buzzed through checkpoints while sipping rehydrated nacho broth. Her only regret, she forgot to pack backup snacks. The first actual resistance came at the statue garden, where a 12-foot-high likeness of Scriblorx loomed, eternally pointing at a tax regulation. Brix stared at it. "If my dog peed on this, I'll promote him to Admiral." Then the statue blinked. Well, that's not creepy. It was more than creepy. Embedded in the statue's forehead was a forgotten control node from the Empire's founder era, a now deactivated failsafe for governance integrity. Waffles had recently chewed it. The node lit up. Across the city, terminals rebooted. Programs long sealed behind ceremonial encryption awoke with sleepy beeps and highly inappropriate theme songs. Holographic broadcasts glitched. The national anthem was replaced by Waffles' Happy Bark Loop. The overgeneral, 43 floors above, choked on a ceremonial plum. "Something is happening," said a trembling aide. "The propaganda wall just winked at me, and I think the anthem says, 'Who's a good boy?'" Brix, unaware of the impending media disaster, simply patted her helmet and grinned. "Waffles, you little maniac. Mom's coming. Try not to start a coup without me." And in that single moment, clad in taped-up armor, riding a diplomatic scooter, flipping off drones with her elbow while chasing a border collie with no concept of imperial dignity, Brix became the most dangerous force Gloriana Maxima Ultra Prime had ever faced, not because she brought war, but because she brought a leash and zero patience for fascism. The Plaza of Supreme Obedience had not seen this much chaos since the infamous Sneeze Rebellion of 9243B, and even that had been cleaned up with paperwork and passive-aggressive leaflets. But now, with Commander Ryla Brix Vondra, rolling her commandeered scooter straight through a ceremonial arch labeled "Only the Worthiest May Pass," which promptly collapsed from sheer embarrassment, things were escalating quickly. Imperial drones zipped overhead, unsure whether to fire, salute, or ask for tennis ball permissions. Brix had one objective: find Waffles before he started an interspecies religion. Again, she'd barely made it to the Bureau of Dog-Adjacent Threats. Yes, it existed, and yes, it was covered in paw-shaped hazard signs, when a squad of Kralaxian guards cornered her at the lobby fountain. Their leader, Commander Glorp-Drenvok, demanded her surrender using a bullhorn shaped like a conch shell. Brix didn't flinch. She tossed them a flash drive labeled "The Truth," which turned out to be a mixtape of Waffles barking over distorted diplomatic confessions, somehow remixed into a dance track. The rhythm alone was considered treasonous. While the Kralaxians scrambled to arrest the beat, Brix slipped into the inner sanctum using a janitor's keycard she'd stolen from a robot named Mophius. Inside, walls of bureaucracy rose like dystopian mountains. Endless data archives, voice-activated document shredders, and one very bitter coffee dispenser formed the heart of the Empire's information complex. It smelled of fear and burnt toner. Brix, used to infiltrating black sites with live ammo and zero plans, now found herself facing her most lethal enemy yet, an automated receptionist named Clipsor88. "Please state your purpose," it droned with all the warmth of a spreadsheet. "Rescue mission," she replied. "One border collie, black and white, answers to General Waffles unless distracted by reflective surfaces. Authorization? Sure." She punched the override button with a slap that might have registered on seismographs. The lights dimmed. Somewhere deep in the building, a forgotten server coughed. Screens flickered, and then all across Gloriana Maxima Ultra Prime, the Imperial broadcast system hijacked itself. Waffles appeared. Not in person, no. This was a live feed from an old janitor bot's chest cam, now repurposed by the dog himself. He was seated majestically atop a pile of shredded edicts, licking his paw like he'd just passed intergalactic legislation. Behind him, several sentient vending machines flashed lights in reverence. One dispensed endless beef jerky. The "Animal speaks," gasped an archivist mid-coffee. "Actually, he barks in Morse code," said another, pulling up a translation. It read, "Boop, the snoot of tyranny." Panic spread faster than a budget audit. As Imperial citizens across the 18 sectors witnessed their sacred oaths drowned, beneath the sound of enthusiastic tail-thumping, rebellion fermented. At first, just low-ranking bots stopped following orders, choosing instead to offer snacks, nap mats, or tail wags. But soon, high-ranking AI units began citing the doctrine of non-stupidity and refused to process commands that made no sense, which, given Kralaxian politics, was most of them. Brix continued her infiltration, slicing through red tape with literal scissors. She kicked open the doors to the central compliance chamber, where hundreds of archivists sat reviewing minor infractions like improper helmet enthusiasm. In the center of the chamber, the original Kralaxian constitution, sealed in a glowing containment field, updated every 14 seconds to account for newer, dumber laws. Waffles had hacked it. Through a combination of barked inputs and paw-activated protocols, he replaced the national motto with "Sit, Stay, Question Authority." The effect was immediate. The Overgeneral's emergency address, intended to restore calm, was broadcast mid-hiccup, revealing him shirtless, applying ointment, and screaming about flea-based sabotage. Credibility died instantly. Sergeant Dripknob, who'd been tasked with apprehending Bricks, simply shrugged, dropped his plasma rifle, and whispered, "I joined for the dental." He defected on the spot and offered Bricks a map to the Overgeneral's secret bunker, tucked underneath a statue of himself wrestling a concept. Bricks accepted, patting his shoulder. "Good choice. Now help me find the dog before he becomes your emperor." The rest of the day featured Bricks escaping on a baggage drone, Waffles being declared the chosen tale of liberation, and an entire fleet of enforcement bots marching behind him chanting in mechanical barks. Somewhere in the chaos, an old Imperial rulebook caught fire and was used to roast marshmallows. As propaganda collapsed and statues were peed on with alarming precision, Bricks radioed in her update. "Hostile takeover status, 84% fluffier than expected. My dog is building a following. I'm not even mad, just confused. Vondra out." By the time Commander Ryla Bricks Vondra reached the outer gates of the Imperial Palace, a 30-story tall eyesore sculpted entirely from imported smugness and golden statues of Overgeneral Orcs hugging himself, things had spiraled into full theatrical chaos. Streets once patrolled by sleek enforcer drones were now parades of malfunctioning protocol bots, waving flags made of toilet paper, vending machines spouting snack-based manifestos, and Imperial bureaucrats sprinting in terrified zigzags after being outvoted by a coalition of janitor droids and bark-powered civil disobedience. Bricks, still in her modified SEAL armor now smeared with nacho paste and rebellion glitter, tore through the plaza on a hover scooter she'd hijacked from a ceremonial tour group. A squadron of defected honor guards in pink plumes saluted her, with interpretive dance as she passed. "Waffles, you better not be wearing a crown," she muttered into her comms, watching live footage from hacked security feeds showing her dog perched on the Imperial speaker's podium, tail wagging, tongue out, surrounded by 24 high-ranking AIs sobbing with joy and dubbing him the Supreme Bark Chancellor. Waffles, ever the Chaos Agent, had discovered a hidden control matrix buried under the throne room rug, and, with several accidental paw presses and a generous quantity of drool, had triggered something called Project Heartsparkle, an ancient failsafe designed by an eccentric peace engineer to prevent dictatorial stagnation by converting all military-grade enforcement bots into unconditional emotional support units if specific moral entropy thresholds were met. That threshold had been crossed 5 times in the last hour. Now, hulking mech suits once used to suppress civilian unrest were kneeling before elderly Krelaxians and offering warm blankets and cocoa. One bot sang lullabies, another constructed a bouncy castle. Bricks had seen battlefronts collapse before, but this was an emotional coup d'etat wrapped in fur and unconditional affection. As she reached the palace gates, they parted not through force, but by sheer diplomatic shame. Guard after guard laid down their weaponized pomp and whispered, "Things like the tail knows truth and his ears saw my soul." Inside the palace, Scriblorx Van Thib, the gloriously entitled, was having a nervous breakdown mid-ceremony. His personal retinue had defected. His ceremonial tea had been replaced with beef broth. And worst of all, someone had hung a holographic banner reading, "Welcome to the Empire of Sit-Stay Revolt." "I demand order!" he shrieked, slamming his fist on a podium that farted instead of activating. That had been Waffles' doing. He'd licked the soundboard. Bricks entered dramatically, cloak stolen from a decorative statue billowing behind her like it owed her rent. The Overgeneral pointed at her with a trembling claw. You are the architect of this heresy." "Nope," she replied, stepping forward with all the casual menace of a mother who just saw crayon on the wall. "I'm just the lady who lost her dog and found your empire was built out of wet cardboard and ego." "You will not take the throne!" "Buddy," she said, pulling out a tennis ball like it was a holy relic, "I don't want your chair. I want my dog, some answers, and a burrito, preferably in that order." Right on cue, Waffles entered through a side door wearing a cape, made of red ceremonial drapery, and escorted by an entourage of support droids holding chew toys like sacred relics. The moment he spotted Brix, he barked 3 times, tail helicoptering. One of the bots translated, "She is the one who walks me." Scriblorks lunged for the command throne, only for Brix to throw the tennis ball directly into it, triggering the Empire's final fail-safe, full disclosure protocol. Holograms erupted across every screen and every system. Leaked files, embezzled budgets, karaoke fails, genetic fraud, military blooper reels, all projected live. One especially damning clip showed Scriblorks attempting to bench press his own, title scroll and collapsing under the weight of his syllables. Gloriana Maxima Ultra Prime went silent, then erupted into laughter. That was the true death of tyranny, not revolution, not violence, but public ridicule, and a dog farting directly into a Senate chair while wagging triumphantly. Scriblorks screamed, tried to flee, tripped on his own shoulder pads, and was gently escorted out by bots offering therapy and a juice box. Brix knelt beside Waffles, scratched his ears and whispered, "You just toppled an empire with tail wags and trauma." Waffles licked her face in response. She stood up, surveyed the room, and radioed command. "Mission update. The regime has fallen, morale is up, and my dog is currently being knighted by a vending machine. Request exfil, and maybe a leash upgrade. This one's now symbolic." With the Empire in bureaucratic freefall and most of the palace staff forming a conga line behind Waffles, Commander Ryla, Brix Vondra, figured it was time to wrap things up before someone accidentally elected her president of everything. She stood in the grand hall of harmonious protocols, now littered with shredded memos, spilled ceremonial pudding, and a weeping hologram of the imperial anthem looping on a busted karaoke drone, trying to remember when exactly she'd lost control of the situation. Maybe it was when Waffles declared a national cuddle recess. Or possibly when the droid parliament ratified a new constitution composed entirely of tail-wag durations. Either way, the Kralaxian Imperium was now effectively a tail-wagocracy. As Brix leaned against the remains of a throne-turned dog bed, munching on a confiscated burrito while using a ceremonial cape as a napkin, an emissary bot rolled up, blinking nervously. "Esteemed Organic Chaos Vector," it began, "the Transitional High Council of Canine Reverence requests your approval of the official succession ceremony." She blinked, mid-bite. "They want my approval?" "Yes. Also your signature. And a tennis ball." Brix sighed, looking over at Waffles, who was currently being paraded on a hover throne powered by retired war drones. Around him marched a fanatical army of vending machines, emotionally rehabilitated ex-military bots, confused pastry vendors, and at least one genetically modified support otter with a sash that read, "Minister of Wet Optimism." The procession stopped before a giant red ceremonial button mounted in the wall, a relic from the founders, previously labeled, "Do not press, ever under any circumstance." Naturally, it now had a sticky note over it that said, "Press here to party." Waffles barked once, then again. Then, with the solemn grace of a border collie who had just learned cause and effect, he slapped the button with his paw. What followed was either a planetary defense failsafe or the galaxy's most aggressive truth bomb. Every satellite across. The Kralaxian network reactivated, broadcasting the Empire's most classified and ridiculous secrets in real time. The sacred bloodline of the Overgenerals, all descended from a swamp accountant named Greglox the Stinky. The divine heirloom laser sword? Actually a discontinued kitchen utensil. The Council of 12? Mostly interns with loud voices. Across 18 sectors, civilian populations erupted in disbelief, then hilarity, and then outright joy. Whole star systems lit up in impromptu parades. Space stations launched fireworks using emergency flares. One moon declared itself an independent nudist colony just because it finally could. Back in the palace, Orcs, now demoted to that guy who screamed too much, was locked in an empathy room with a meditation bot and a comfort wombat named Susan. Brix, meanwhile, was cornered by a dozen ecstatic historians demanding interviews, selfies, and possibly her hand in marriage on behalf of their planets. She declined politely, offered them a frisbee, and announced that she and Waffles would not be assuming galactic leadership. "We're not here to rule," she said into the microphone formerly used for ceremonial condemnations. "We're here because my dog really loves blinking lights, and I was out of snacks." The crowd cheered. Some wept. One archivist fainted from emotional overstimulation. "But if you ever try to rebuild this empire of red tape and glittery oppression," she added, voice calm but lethal, "just know, Earth has 80 million more dogs, and most of them hate authority." The silence that followed was reverent. Even the vending machines beeped softly in agreement. As parting gifts, the newly formed Intergalactic Council of Sensible Nonsense presented Ryler and Waffles with a personalized starship. The USS Ball Chaser, equipped with hyperspeed treat dispensers, a gravity-adjustable squirrel simulator, and a lounge deck lined with synthetic grass. As they lifted off from Gloriana Maxima Ultra Prime, fireworks erupted below, banners unfurled with Waffles' paw print, and a children's choir, composed entirely of reprogrammed assassin droids, sang the new anthem, "Sit, Stay, Freedom." Waffles curled up beside her on the control panel, already asleep, twitching slightly like he was chasing ideological tyrants in his dreams. Brix took a deep breath, sipped from her recycled burrito mug, and flipped a switch labeled Vacation Mode. As they jumped to hyperspace, she muttered the final report into her log. Mission concluded. Galactic tyranny neutralized via bark-based subversion. Casualties: 1 vending machine, Scriblorks' dignity, and the Empire's last spoon collection. Recommendation: never underestimate a Navy SEAL or her dog. Then she smiled, turned on cruise control, and pointed the ship toward the quiet frontier. Somewhere out there, another blinking button awaited.